Hey guys, so this is my new My Hero What If that I'm actually really pumped for. Now, basically, this is the first What If I'm uploading this week, or the first like four What Ifs I'm uploading this week. Now, the next three What Ifs I'm going to be uploading this week are only going to be live action What Ifs. Basically, I'm going to be uploading What If Spider-Man was in the DC universe, or better yet, just in the CW, or either in Titans, Stargirl, any type of DC TV show. So I may do like a crossover event, I might do that series. I might do that What If in like 3 parts, then finish it in 3 parts, and basically do it as in basically each part would be about like 30 minutes, maybe even an hour long. Basically, is it gonna be Spider-Man going to universe, like going to the CW universe, the Titans TV show, the Stargirl TV show, Flash, Supergirl. I'm going to start off with the classic, known CW TV shows involving DC. Then I'll move on to, other TV shows like Titans and Stargirl and stuff like that. So yeah. Also, the other two what I'm going to be uploading are going to be, I think it was what if Flash was in the MCU, or what if pretty much what if Flash from the DCU was in the MCU. I might be uploading that, but I don't know. I also will be uploading I think it was I also will be uploading a what if I also will be uploading a what if Tom Holland Spider-Man was in the Legends of Tomorrow TV show. I also will be uploading that. Now, for the CW one, I'm either going to be making my own fan fiction, my own version of Peter Parker and that actor. For the CW, whole time what if Spider-Man was in the CW. I also will be uploading what the Ninja Turtles were in the CW. And I'll be uploading this video, and also the fourth video I'll be uploading this week is going to be the fourth video I know I'm gonna make this week is going to be okay, yeah, it was what if Tom Holland Spider-Man was in the Legends of the Marvel TV show, what if Spider-Man was in CW, and also what if DCU Flash was in the MCU. Yeah, those are 3 videos I'm gonna be uploading next and be ending out for the week. Now, this weekend I probably won't have enough time, since it is my last phase of pretty much moving stuff around in my room and all sorts of other stuff, just doing a lot of work. So this weekend I'll probably be uploading about maybe a couple YouTube shorts. I'll barrage of them if I have time, but like 5 or 6 videos of them. And I also will be uploading is very slight, very small, maybe be uploading another what if, a Young Justice what if. You guys can decide which one, like a part 2 or like a straight up just new what if. I also will be uploading, so I'll be at least trying to upload 6 or 5 YouTube shorts tomorrow. I mean on the weekends, and upload at least maybe one what if on the weekends. So yeah. I also will be uploading next week or next weekend my swap motion I've been working on for about a couple weeks, or about like half a month. Not half a month, half a month. Not an actual month, but half a month. So yeah, so enough of me talking, and let's actually start the what if. So let's start. So this is what if Deku was Charles Xavier's son, part 1. Now, basically, I expect this to get pretty long, or pretty much this series to get pretty long. Now, all the other Deku what ifs I've been making, I haven't finished them. I think I have finished some of them, like the Apocalypse one, and the Sweet Home what if for Deku. I canceled that, so I'm not gonna be making that anymore. But basically, guys, next week I'm only gonna be uploading Deku what ifs, so just get ready for that. And basically, yeah, so let's get started into it, guys. So we start our story off with pretty much the Deku's family tree. Now, basically, we start our story off. And the timeline for this, basically, the X-Men timeline will be similar to sort of the DC, sort of the comics and also the movies as well. Now, basically, Deku wouldn't come into the picture until his canon birth, about maybe like earlier, but maybe younger, but whatever. So basically, we start our story off with Charles Xavier. Now, Charles Xavier is born and he has a life, and basically he becomes, Professor X. He makes the X-Men, and in this universe, mutants and quirks are actually split into two different categories. Now, basically, mutants and quirks are split into very different categories in society, and pretty much people think, or it is proven, that mutations are stronger than quirks. Basically, most people being feared upon mutants. And guys, in the comments, who do you think would win? Who do you think's more powerful, mutants or quirk people? But yeah, so basically, what basically the society did, they pretty much cut society into three categories: quirkless, quirked, and mutations. Now, mutations were given more of a harsher time, but most of them got more jobs, or mainly got more, more physical opportunities, and mainly most of them got hero jobs, since their quirks are so powerful. And no quirk nullifying quirks or anything like that could work on them, since mutations were completely just evolution for, because quirks are evolution as well, but mutations are the evolution of quirks in this universe. Basically, them being evolved from the genetic code of quirks. Now, basically, the first quirk person would actually be pretty much amongst the first modern first modern mutants in the My Hero world would be Deku's father, Charles Xavier, Magneto, and a couple others. We're not gonna really get into those. Now, basically, I will be switching up some of the titles of the characters, be making some people in Class 1A mutants, and with their mutations, they may lose all the weaknesses they have with their original quirk, or I might just give them new power in general. Now, yeah, and also, I might be switching up some of the pro heroes to have mutations, or quirks as well. So yeah, so let's get into it. After Deck, so basically after the X-Men are formed, and after their heartbreaks, their battles, pretty much everything leading up all the way a couple years before Dark Phoenix even came to be, basically a couple years after Logan left the team, and after a certain member of the X-Men died, and this X-Men member would be Angel. Now, basically, normally Angel, I wasn't gonna kill off Angel, but for this to work, Angel would have died in a fight between, pretty much a huge fight between the Brotherhood of Evil, multiple other mutant haters, pretty much other societies that hated mutants. Basically, the My Hero version of, I think, the same council, the same people that hunt down mutants. Basically, in this world, it's like a whole entire system, or not a system. It's just an organization that funds themselves to try to eliminate mutants, but they already know that mutants are evolutions of quirks. So yeah, 50 at 5, like 1% of people a year, if they're both from very long lines of quirk people, it's like not really that. It's rare, but it's not that rare. It's it's not that rare for somebody in a long generation of quirk people to have kids with mutations. And pretty much mutations are shown to be, very, very more. You pretty much you're a mutant if you're born with your mutation or your power after you're 5 years old, probably in your teenage years. So basically, pretty much we start our story off, or our main story, with Deku after the events of pretty much Angel dying. After Angel would die, Magneto and the Brotherhood of Evil would actually stop, because they never truly wanted anybody to suffer, because mainly the world, or pretty much the X-Men, were well shocked. They were scared. Pretty much, most of them were still young, but over time they became older. Cyclops, he pretty much quit after pretty much a couple of years later. Charles would have I never knew, but he'll know sooner about something else that he had in his life. And pretty much Charles would have over time pretty much came to conclusion or came to his character arc to basically doing the events of Days of Future Past. And basically he would have taken a drug, getting rid of his powers, but giving him the ability to walk. And basically he would still be able to pass on the mutation to his children still, but he wouldn't be able to use his power unless the drug wore it off. Now he would have used his drug to walk around and to pretty much have a life, and he would actually have a life and would have married a woman. This woman would be Azuka Midoriya. Now I'm pretty much Inko Midoriya. Now Inko would have known about Charles' life and how he's Professor X and all other stuff. Now they would live in the X mansion, basically them having a life of sorts. Now, over time, pretty much the X-Men or Charles Xavier's House for Gifted were actually was really well expanded. After pretty much when Charles, a couple years or like a year after Charles married Inko, he would have had a talk with pretty much the original or the canon pretty much owner or canon principal of UA. Now, basically, for this pretty much thing, basically, they would have had a conversation, and Charles would have been given opportunity to start up the home for gifted youngsters again. Now, in this universe, pretty much the principal of UA would have been a mutant instead of a Quirk person. And basically, he would have asked Charles to start the school for gifted youngsters once again, so people with mutants wouldn't feel rejected. Because most in society nowadays, Quirk people are treated worsely. But let's continue. Basically, most of people would know, or mainly most people would know mutations. Deep down, they would know mutation or mutant people with mutants would be stronger. But mainly people with mutations that wanted normal average jobs, like I don't know, being a doctor, uh, a chemist, anything like just a desk job, they would be pretty much denied because they would feel like they were more fitted with physical work. They were more fitted with using their mutations for other uses, and most people didn't even want to lend them a job at all. The only job people with mutations could pull off or have would be basically, heroes. And most people didn't want to be heroes. Most people did want to, but half of the time they would be left down because the core population or half of the core population wouldn't give their trust to mutations or mutants. Basically, seeing them as very much seeing themselves as they look at people with mutants that they can't be like them. Pretty much, they can't look up to them because they're not mutants either. They aren't as powerful as them. And basically, most people over time would warm up to mutants over the years, but eventually, mutants, Quirk people, and humans would be divided equally throughout the whole humans, pretty much population. And basically, pretty much the Earth was better, or pretty much was cured of most of its, bad problems like poisoning and pretty much global warming and everything. Basically, what would happen is most people around the world with quirks, mutations would work together 1 year to basically get rid of most of the pretty much pure. I don't even know what to say, but basically the pretty much pollution. Yep, that's what I'm looking for. Pollution in the water, global warming, the poisoning, the earth, everything. They would use most of their powers of reality. Some of their powers are pretty much time moving backwards and pretty much healing powers to basically, save the earth and give Earth a couple more thousands of years of fresh and more sustainable life and land. Now, basically, over the years, people would cut it back down, but they would have more time with it, and they would be a little bit more a little bit more not as greedy as they were before, destroying the earth again. Now that would work, but still, people wouldn't look up the mutants because they would have seen mutants as too powerful. They would have seen fear in mutants. Now, mutants have the same biological code as Quirk people. They just got their powers later, and also basically mainly them were bullied because they only got their powers, or mainly all the way up until you're about 17. Pretty much mutants can be calculated by a blood test. The blood test takes about a couple weeks to actually go through. Now, basically, normally people with mutations they get their powers probably at 13 and 14. Tops maybe even 19 or 20. Now, basically, pretty much most of the world would see mutants as a threat. Mainly the human population would see Quirk people and mutants as a threat. Mainly mutants because half the time people don't really have that much cautions against mutants. Power dampening braces for Quirks only dampen the powers of mutants, but they can still use their powers. They were just weakened. Now, basically, through the years, mutants were still warmed up, and more people started accepting mutants, but still, they were still denied. And most people saw mutants as pretty much abominations, those that had very, not very eye pleasing mutations. Now, basically, pretty much over the time, people still rejected mutants halfway through the whole country. And mainly most of that hate was from Japan, America, and a couple other countries. Now, basically, we would start over time. The democracy between mutants were dialed down, but still very strong. And basically, still mutants are still hated normally around the country, but mainly easiest jobs mutants could get is to be a hero or to basically become a pro hero. But half of the time, most people with mutants they were mainly rejected or not given enough education to pass, hero schools. But normally, most of them had rich families. Most of them, actually, their parents lied about them not being mutants. Now, pretty much, we would see Deku's story, or his, pretty much, life, or his life through this whole entire, journey. Now, basically, we start our story, basically, a couple, like, mm, a, about a year after the X-Men, what was it? Pretty much, what was it? Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters reopens. And basically, it opens and merges with UA. Basically, Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, as in both categories, mutants and Quirk people. Pretty much, it not being called UA, it being called basically um, Charles Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. But just Charles School for short. Now, basically, we would see Deku get born about a year after the whole entire school would have its run, and the school would be very successful. Basically, it giving birth to a lot of pro heroes, including All Might, and also a couple others. Now, basically, Deku would be born, but basically, the timeline for this, basically, All Might would be trained, but he would graduate from UA, basically, like, just spending about a couple days at UA to graduate and him becoming a pro hero for a couple years. Now that could be, oh man, I messed up the timeline. Let me show it. Let me pause real quick. Okay, I got it right. Basically, 4 years after the school was pretty much given this whole entire thing, Charles is about like in his 40s or late 30s. Basically Charles would have pretty much shown himself or trained himself to become better. Now, over time, Charles would go to doctors over doctors, and eventually, some of them would find out how to restore his legs or basically his walking permanently without him using the drug. So that's what he did. Charles stopped taking the drug. Over time, he did feel some pain in his legs, but over time, he was able to walk just like he was when he was younger. Even better this time, since it was some, pretty much altercations by the Quirk doctor, or pretty much the mutation doctor, or the mutant. Pretty much Charles got helped by, had a very, very, very like miracle god level healing power, and basically it would give Charles his running back, or pretty much his legs back, and also would have gave Charles his pretty much wouldn't give him his powers back, but he would basically stop taking the drug, and he would basically be able to use his powers again. And basically, Charles over time would have pretty much became a more head-on principal of the school, alongside pretty much Principal Nezu. Now, Principal Nezu will be a vice principal of sorts, alongside pretty much multiple other pro heroes being teachers there, alongside other people, or other X-Men. Now, only about 5 X-Men came back to pretty much Charles Xavier's school. Now, basically, they would go back to pretty much the school to pretty much teach there. Beast, Beast, um, Beast, Logan, Cyclops, no, Beast, Logan, Colossus, Pietro. Pietro would be in the X-Men. He would be in this universe, he would be a founding member of the X-Men alongside Wanda. So Pietro and Wanda, basically, he wouldn't be a founding member, but he would join the X-Men a couple of years after the events of pretty much Dark Phoenix, and pretty much his father wouldn't really, blame Pietro for that much, because pretty much Magneto knew what he did to Angel was wrong. Basically, pretty much, what was it? He knew what, pretty much his team did to Angel was wrong. He never intended to kill Angel. And basically, over time, pretty much Wanda and Pietro would have actually joined the school to teach, and multiple other classic members of the X-Men would, except for Cyclops and Logan, because they would have other things with their mind. Logan would live himself alone in peace and grow old, or slowly grow old. And Cyclops would have just stayed to himself, live in a very humble cabin in the forest, staying away from other people, and try and get over the death of Jean. Now, basically, we would see that could be born about 4 years after the school was pretty much, 4 years after the school was, opened and given another chance and blah blah blah. Basically, Charles Xavier School would have the same type of build as UA's school, but just a little bit more bigger and a little bit more Charles Xavier-esque. A lot more X-Men mansions. A lot more X-Men mansion type of, aesthetic. So basically, we would say Deku get born, and Deku would be born to Charles Xavier. Now, Charles would have, cherished Deku and would teach them most of everything. Now, Charles would have hoped Deku to be a Quirk person so he wouldn't go through the same heartbreaks as pretty much, him, Magneto, and multiple other mutants. Now, at the time Deku was 5, pretty much Xavier knew that Deku didn't have a quirk. They went to the Quirk doctor, and the Quirk doctor says Deku did not have the defect in his pinky toe, and basically got 2 joints in there, so he can't be a Quirk person. So basically, they said we could do a blood test if he's a mutant. Basically, them saying no thank you. Now, basically, other thing, Charles just hoped for Deku to be normal, to be human, so he still wouldn't have to go through the heartbreaks of just being a mutant. Now, basically, a part of Charles still wanted Deku to have a quirk, so he wouldn't be that lower citizen of people, humans, or quirk people. I mean, humans or just quirkless people, because quirkless people and humans were treated the worst out of mutants and quirk people. Deku was born, and basically over the years, Deku was supposed to get his powers at about 15 or 14 or 13. Over time, Deku slowly shown pretty much progress of having a power, but over time, Deku pretty much told his dad that he did something crazy, a very powerful power, but over time, when his father asked him to do it again, pretty much Deku said, I did it a minute ago. I swore I did it. Basically, his father being kind of deceptive, but reading his mind every time. And Charles thinking to himself, Deku is a very unique power. Now, basically, over time, every time Deku told his father that he did something powerful, he always slightly wrote his mind, knowing that Deku, now we going deep down into Deku's brain to know exactly what he's thinking, just thinking if he's telling the truth or not, or just going through his mind to see if he's telling the truth or not taking too much information. Now, basically, over time, Deku would have, developed his mutation. Now, when Deku went to school, he was going to a public school before he went to Charles Xavier school. Basically, Deku would go to school, basically, with Bakugo, and basically also with multiple other students, including pretty much Taruki and Ida as well. Pretty much this school being a very expensive type private school, but also Bakugo in this world. He would have been born with a mutant quirk. Now, basically, mutant quirks are very, very rare. A mutant quirk is very similar to a quirk, but basically, a mutant quirk is basically just a quirk with a extra power added onto it, kind of like Todoroki's power. Just if Todoroki had a mutant quirk, he would basically have three powers. So basically, his mutant quirk is basically a combination of his quirk and also a random gene that his great great parents had, like a random quirk they had. So basically, a mutant quirk is very hard to master and incredibly hard to skill and keep control. Bakugo normally just uses his quirk side of his power and barely ever uses his mutation because he barely even wants to use it. And half the time over the years, he's actually forgotten he even has a mutant quirk. Now, basically, he would have been, get to a private school since in this universe, his parents would be above middle class and would be rich enough to send him to a private school. Now, basically, in this world, basically, they would have all went to the private school. Basically, over the time, Deku learning, but mainly getting bullied by Bakugo. Bakugo saying, "You're just a worthless little quirkless boy." Basically, Deku not even knowing yet that he actually has a mutation, just feeling that no one believes him. But his father always telling him that he believes him. Deku not really believing his father himself. Now, Deku over time would get bullied and his self-confidence would go down, just the same as his canon Deku. So basically, guys, what would happen here is basically Deku would, become bullied. And eventually Bakugo would tell Deku to jump off a roof. Maybe in your next life you'd be born with a power. And basically, Deku would be feeling down. And he would actually think about it. And he would actually go up on top of the roof and think about it. But Deku stopped himself knowing that he had people that loved him. And he had a life. And his father loved him, and he could have a life no matter what, even if he was quirkless. So Deku walked off the roof and walked back down the stairs and pretty much walked down the sludge villain tunnel, him feeling himself, pretty much him coming across the sludge villain. The sludge villain would have tackled towards Deku, and Deku would be fast enough since in this canon, or in this universe, Deku would be trained by multiple other people on the X-Men team, including Pietro and pretty much Beast, to work on his pretty much athletics and also his body and train his body to be pretty physical, kind of like the same swimmer type athletic build that Spider-Man has. Basically, Deku being fast enough to dodge some of the sludge villain's attacks for about a couple minutes, about 5 minutes, but eventually he would get caught on his foot, dragged into the sludge villain, and pretty much started to get suffocated. Now, at that point, Deku's eyes started glowing bright yellow, and his body started becoming more red, like a burning stove. His skin becoming more brighter and brighter to a point where it looked like it was straight up just glowing bright red, kind of like a stove top. Straight up just completely red. Deku's body felt like it was on fire, but the sludge villain felt like he was literally in the core of the sun. It felt like the sludge villain was disintegrating, and that would happen. Deku blacked out, and the sludge villain was completely gone and disintegrated, and Deku was as well. Now, All Might showed up, seeing that it was a huge burnt hole or crater where Deku was, and we see Deku in the core of the earth. Now, what would happen here? Deku's body would have completely changed into a type of organic type, pretty much goop, like from the pretty much goop, kind of like from the Benton TV show type of lava creature or body or humanoid body. Now he would be goop, and basically he would pretty much burn himself through the concrete and all the way up on top of the surface area a couple blocks away from the X Mansion. The X Mansion would be different from Charles's school because it would be the house or the mansion Charles would live with Inko and Deku. Now Deku would have came out of the lava and basically would have seen himself reconstruct back into his humanoid body, and his body being completely smoking, and also his clothes being completely burnt off and gone. Now Deku would have ran off, and he would have found some clothes on the ground. Basically, I guess pretty much Deku just seen some random clothes on the ground. Surprisingly, them being able to fit him, but just them being really tight. Deku would have ran down the street, eventually getting back to the house. Now, basically, what would happen at this point? Deku would have ran back home. He would have snuck back into the house, and basically, he would have thought to himself what was going on and that why it hurt so much. Halfway when the power started to awaken, Deku's body felt like it was on fire, like he was burning from the inside out. Now, when he opened his eyes, when he was in the concrete lava eyes, it felt like he was just floating in water, that he was just relaxed, or just chilling in the water, that his body was completely limp, and he felt it won. Now, basically, Deku pretty much told his father, and his father was confused. Now, he took him to this pretty much the X Mansion, and pretty much at Charles's school and also the X Mansion, they do have the same type of, training ground and the danger room and everything, but mainly the danger room and the sign and pretty much the whole entire daycare, the day kit or first day, the science hall. Everything is more high tech and way more better quality at Charles's school than his house, but it still is high quality to get the job done and very high tech. So basically, Deku would have took down the basement to pretty much the Quinjet area, basically just having the cars of Xavier and multiple of his, just jets and stuff that he had in the olden days. Basically, Xavier taking Deku to a pretty much a room. At this point, Deku would be about, let's say, 15, in his time, about 5 months before he turned 16. And basically, he would get told by Charles to stand still. Basically, him being scanned down and us seeing that he has some sort of mutation. And pretty much, Charles did a blood test on Deku a year ago. Basically, him not having the courage to look through the test, but him doing it, pretty much him surprisingly not feeling bad or even sad or just proud for his son to be a mutant. Now, basically, Xavier would have told Deku basically that you're a mutant, son, and I guess your mutation is very very different from, well, you and your mother and mine. And basically, Deku would have said it makes no sense. Half of the time, people that are born with powers, half of the time mutations are completely accurate or they're just the same as, well, their parents. There's no way I could have just been born with a random mutation. Basically, pretty much Charles saying, it happens, son. Basically, Deku saying, no, it has to be, I have to have, uh, basically, Deku being kind of frustrated. Deku would have been frustrated and his, pretty much, everything in the room would have started shaking like it was some sort of, well, tornado or something happening. Charles would have asked the AI what was going on, and he said it was perfect weather outside, and that it was just starting up a storm out of nowhere, right on top of the house. And basically, Charles would have put it together and would have told Deku to calm down. Deku would have been yelled at over time. Charles would have slowly tried to reason with Deku, and Deku would have slowly calmed down. And basically, over the times, over a couple months later, about 10 months later, Deku basically Deku would have get taught over the 5 months about his different abilities. Now let's talk about Deku's powers. Different abilities. Sorry. Let's talk about Deku's powers. And basically, Deku's powers would be similar to Legion's powers. Pretty much Deku's brother. Now Legion is, a character in this series, but he won't be introduced later on until part 3 or probably at the end of part 2. Now basically, we see Deku basically. Well, nah, not scratch it. Legion won't be a character, but I will be saying that somebody in UA will be the secret or long lost son of basically Charles Xavier. Now, basically, from that point, basically, well, so basically, well, Deku over the 10 months, and basically about the whole entire Charles the secret son. Basically, we'll talk about that later on, maybe maybe near the end of part 2, or probably at the beginning of part 2. And basically, we start now. Basically, we continue our story with basically Deku over the 10 months before his birthday. Basically, him training, and also this 10 months, also his birthday being a day before the U.S. entry exams. Now, basically, Deku would have trained himself over the months with his father and also other X-Men members, including Pietro, Wanda, Beast, and also a couple others. Basically, train himself over. Now, basically, what would happen from that point on? Basically, Deku would have unlocked a bunch of abilities, and basically Deku's abilities would be very, very, very similar to Legend's abilities or Legion's abilities. Charles Xavier's canon son. Basically, his powers would be sort of a random powers. Now, he wouldn't have the whole entire mental, the whole entire pretty much broke up personalities as Legion, but he would have his own personality, and he would also have sort of a Peter Parker type personality, or kind of Pietro type personality, cocky but also very smart, like kind of like Peter Parker, the Spider-Man. And basically, what would happen doing all this? Basically, Deku would unlock multiple abilities, and Deku would unlock a lot more. Deku would unlock at least 150 powers. Basically, him having even more underneath the skin. Basically, having the exact same canon powers as Legion. Pretty much, he would have the same number as Legion's powers, but they would all be random. And sometimes he would just get a new power out of nowhere. Basically, he would be able to pretty much randomly use his mutation to use a power, but he could never. But Deku, couldn't focus, or pretty much never found out how he could accurately pretty much switch to a power. Now, basically, Deku probably never be able to accurately switch to a power he wants, but Deku normally would think really hard, and normally or randomly and luckily he would get the power he wanted. Now, Deku's powers are very similar to the randomness of Legion, but basically Deku's in control. But every time Deku tries to use his power, basically a new power pretty much emerges from Deku's body. And Deku knows when his power or his mutation is activated when he feels a tingling sensation on his spine, or when his body starts glowing, shooting projectiles, or just mutates. Big changes like that. But if it was little changes like invulnerability or like regeneration, stuff like that, pretty much is a tingling sensation in the back of Deku's pretty much spine, or pretty much his back. So basically, after Deku would train himself, basically Deku would have multiple different abilities, including his lava, pretty much his humanoid
lot of his shapeshifting in general, as in Mystique's powers. He would also have pretty much any ability possible, including powers of Wolverine, Deadpool, Cyclops, pretty much any superpower. Basically, any superpower. But he could only use 3 powers an hour a day. So he could only use, what was it? 3 powers a time, but he has to wait probably about, actually scratchy. He's not gonna have a time limit. He'll just be able to randomly use his powers. And also, on the other factor of that, after he's done using his mutation and he turns it off, he has to restart it again, and he gets another mutation or another pretty much new power. But the main power Deku can activate the most and accurately use was his mind reading. Deku could mind read and also pretty much project his thoughts into people, but not on a level as Xavier, but could have. Now, basically, Deku's telepathy, or basically his psychic abilities, were hidden away.
Basically, Deku would pretty much get trained more and more on his mental abilities. Basically, only abilities Deku can use, accurately were about the same base powers as Charles Xavier, with the whole time mind reading, mind manipulation, projecting thoughts into people's minds, psychic battles, stuff like that. The same level as Charles Xavier, but just a tad more stronger. But Deku never tapped into the part of his head that can make him stronger than his father. Now, basically, that part of his head was basically plus the array of abilities Deku had other than his mind reading abilities. But basically, Deku, when he used his power, he could only use his sorry guys, he can only use his mutation, but he can't use his telepathic abilities at the same time. Now, basically, Deku's telepathy hasn't reached the level as Charles Xavier, so at this point in time, Deku will be only able to read minds and look through people's heads and also project his body into people's pretty much minds. Kind of like the mind key and locking key on Netflix. Basically, project himself into somebody's mind or just enter somebody's mind and see what's going on. Now, basically, Deku would do this for a couple years and would have trained his pretty much psychic abilities and also trained his other abilities as well. Pretty much him mastering most of them, but most new powers emerging over time and time again after he trains more. So Deku had to learn how to learn his abilities on the fly. Now we can switch to basically Deku a couple months later after the 10 months of training with his processors or his peers like the X-Men and his father. Basically they would be trained. They would be trained and basically well get trained over and over. Now guys, you might hear a little change of the audio. Basically, I just did like a day break from this recording, so this video might come out on Thursday night or Thursday evening after the normal, at probably like 7:20 or 7:13. Basically, yeah. So basically, my last 3 what is I'm gonna be uploading this week I'm gonna be recording on Friday night and also maybe tonight as well, since I'm going to try to upload 4 videos. It doesn't matter what day they are, at least or at most I will be technically making 4 what ifs a week. So after this video, I'm going to be uploading, all the videos as I said earlier. But yeah, so let's continue in the story. And basically, we see Deku and him getting trained. Now, Deku is getting trained, and eventually Deku is done with the training. A couple days, or I think about like 2 days before the entry exams, Deku has his birthday party and has some of his friends from school. Pretty much having a little bit more friends, mainly the most of the percent of the school that are mutants, more or less see Deku as a brother, since Deku is now a mutant, and also them finding out that Deku's father was Charles Xavier. Now, Charles wanted to keep that Deku was his son a secret until he moved or he was old enough to go into the Charles home or the Charles school or the Charles Xavier school so he can be protected or like he could be around his father. And also on top of that, basically Deku was also told not to tell his identity because this pretty much the security in his public school he was going to, or pretty much the private school he was going to, wasn't really that good. It was good, but not on the level of the X Mansion. I mean, not the X Mansion, the pretty much school or Charles' school. Now, basically, we continue with Deku basically having a few friends that are mutants, and most of them actually being, pretty much just randoms with mutations that are very similar to their quirks, or like quirks in like the canon world, just without the weaknesses. And also, we see Deku actually make friends with Ida, and also slightly become acquainted with Todoroki, but not actually friends with him. Todoroki knows Deku, but doesn't know him as a friend. Now, basically, you also see Deku make a friend with a couple other mutants that might appear later on in this series more and more. Uh, Jacob and Jerome. Jacob and Jerome. Jacob and Jerome. So yeah. So I'm going to have to basically, remember that. So yeah, so basically, Jacob and Jerome, their mutations are basically a type of mutation, not very common. Basically, they don't have a mutant quirk like Bakugo. Basically, they have pretty much their powers are that they are pretty much cousins or pretty much sons of actually other X-Men members. Now Jacob is the son of Iceman. Basically, his abilities is pyrokinesis, or pretty much he can control ice and fire, and pretty much he can control basically ice on the same level as his father, and control fire on the same level as Johnny Storm. But basically, he can only use it for a short amount of time until his body starts to freeze up, or just straight up just overheat or freeze to little solid ice. So he can't change his body into pure, and he can't change his body into ice like Iceman, and he can't turn into fire like Johnny Storm, but he can pretty much burst fire and ice from his body in the form of some sort of human explosion, but he can't use it, in a solid, one way blast. So his powers is kind of indiscriminate. So basically, you also see pretty much what was it, Jerome. Basically, Jerome, his abilities. He's the son of basically, well, not really the son. He's the great. No, scratch it. He's the great son, the grandson of, yeah, scratch it. He's the son. He's just straight up the son of Cable. I mean, not Cable, Bishop. It's pretty much Jerome has pretty much the same abilities as Bishop, just with an extra ability. Him having a slight change in his mutation due to the fact that his mother is a cord person. Basically, he can absorb energy and redistribute it like his father, but he also has superhuman agility and strength on par with like super soldier levels. And basically, Deku, Jerome, Jacob, Ida, and Todoroki kind of are all friends. Now, they basically sometimes throughout the 10 months, Deku does train with them some days, probably like through the weeks, but mainly trains with his, mainly trains with the X-Men and pretty much his father. The X-Men also do train their sons, like Iceman does train his son, and also pretty much Bishop does train his son as well. And basically, Deku, Bishop, Jacob, and basically Deku, Bishop, Jerome, Jacob, and Ida are all trained. Pretty much most of the time are all trained together. Now, basically, all the way up into the 10-month arc training, after Deku's whole entire party and everything, going to pretty much Dave and Buster's or whatever, is having a blast of sorts. Mainly just going to pretty much pretty much just fun place after fun place after fun place, just going to arcades after arcades over and over, pretty much just having a blast for his 16th birthday. Now, basically, when Deku turned 16, pretty much 2 days later, the entrance exam comes along. And basically, Deku goes with his friends, and basically they all go through the gate together. Basically, them not actually coming across, pretty much Deku not tripping or even bumping into Araka and him not coming across Araka's path. Now you guys can decide at this point. I was kind of going through the fact who should be shipped with Deku, but who should be shipped with Deku? I might think Momo, but I'm shipped way too many of my what Deku what ifs with Momo. So I'm probably gonna ship Deku with probably the super smart girl class 1B, or probably Kendo from class 1B, and I'm gonna move up to class 1A. Now basically, we see Deku basically will go in class, and we basically see him walk into class. Now basically, you see him walk into class with the rest of his friends. They sit down and they start talking. And basically, Deku sees a girl walk into class, and basically in this world or in this canon, basically Kendo is actually picked to be in class 1A instead of Mineta, because obviously that would be more accurate. Since Mineta literally has one of the most useless, well, not useless, but mainly useless and pointless quirks in the whole, My Hero universe. Yeah. So basically, Kendo is, pretty much replacing Mineta off the bat since she got into Class 1A but not get moved up to Class 1A. Since Mineta is now in Class 1A, that might change the sports principles just a little bit, but yeah, whatever. Basically, continue off with pretty much Deku in class, just watching Kendo and being kind of, fascinated by her. And Deku thinks, or pretty much slightly gets the impulse to try to read her mind or something, learn more about her. But Deku doesn't want to do that because over time, Deku's father told Deku the rules of, your powers. You can't use them for selfish reasons, and then not hurt anybody mentally, not take people's memories, not to, well, turn somebody into a vegetable, not to destroy somebody mentally and spiritually. Mentally is changing somebody's mind is a cruel, most dangerous fact of all, man. And basically, Deku's confused by this, but he knows that he can't really, use his powers for selfish needs to just read a girl he likes mind without permission. Basically, Deku goes over to Kendo to try to talk to her, but he gets stopped when basically Zao walks into class and tells him to sit down and get ready. Basically, him being kind of, just chill attitude, him saying, get up and go outside, we're doing combat, not combat training. I forgot what I was about to say. Pretty much Bakugo in the class says, hurry it up. Pretty much as I was saying, I already don't like you. Now, basically, he goes on about pretty much getting ready for the pretty much Quirk assessments, and they get out of your butt skin, the sports clothes, and let's go. And they get shown to the sports area. They get shown to the gym area. They get dressed, and basically, most of the people in class, when they see Deku and his friends, have a little bit of scars, but mainly Deku having scars around his body, since half of Deku's abilities mainly don't have counteractions to keep himself from not dying or getting hurt by using his mutation, but most of his powers do. So basically, Deku gets into his sports outfit. So basically, Deku pretty much goes outside and basically gets ready into his sports outfit and pretty much gets told to get ready. And basically, Deku gets into a position after pretty much getting told to throw the ball. Deku goes into kind of like a karate type crouch position and winds up his hand to basically throw it, and basically he uses his mutation to basically blast it off. The basically Deku focuses most of his mind to try to one of his strength mutations or powers, but he lands on some sort of wind manipulation new ability that basically makes Deku able to mimic the wind pressure or wind powers that All For One gives on when he uses super strength. Basically, Deku being able to manipulate the wind around his hand and around his body to push it forwards, simulating super strength. Now, Deku knows that he hasn't activated super strength and it's supposed to be a new power, since it has different feelings each time he uses his powers, and he knows if which one's new or old, or he already uses it. Now, for the long jump, Deku activates his mutation, not knowing what he's going to get, just trying to go random. Basically, him using the same pretty much what was it manipulation power pretty much in a row. Him being very shocked that he can use this power in a row. Meaning the new powers mainly they do come back, or pretty much Deku can reactivate them like about 6 or 7 times after he uses multiple different abilities, and then he can reuse it or probably comes across it again. Now, basically, Deku walks off, and for the race, Deku runs pretty much activating on accuracy this time, pretty much activating pretty much a power mimicking the powers of Quicksilver from pretty much the X-Men Apocalypse universe or the pretty much Days of Future Past Quicksilver. Him being able to run incredibly fast and ace the whole entire race in general. Now for the grip test strength, Deku mimics one of his abilities, but pretty much mimics into his lava liquid, pretty much molten lava liquid type, Hydra Man type, high lava powers. Basically, him being able to overheat the bars to make them glitch out and say the highest number, and him winning on the old grip test strength, but him burning through it and pretty much melting it. Now is how I have to tell one of them to get another pair and pretty much scold Deku for burning it. Now basically they would be continuing the grip test strength, and Deku would have got first place since his powers were kind of in there, but they did get him top place. Everybody was very confused, and also most people that didn't know Deku were kind of confused on how Deku could use multiple powers at once. Most of them say you have a really good quirk. Most of them said you have a mutation or something with kind of a smug, voice or something. Deku is a easy mutant, and also he has multiple mutations that are random. Basically, they are really fascinated by this, seeing that them not knowing that mutants could have multiple abilities over 150. So Deku explained that he has powers in the 100s levels, and pretty much them asking what level are you in mutation. And basically, Omega and Beta and Alpha, whole entire those categories of mutations, those still apply to quirks and also mutations, but mainly are more pretty much more common for mutations or for people to ask people with mutants, what's your level. Now basically Deku says I'm an Omega level or probably an Alpha. Don't really know. Now basically they're really pretty much fascinated that Deku could be an Omega level, because most Omega level mutants are incredibly powerful, and Deku seems like he's incredibly powerful since he does have the potential to have every power known to comic book or superhero knowledge in general. Now basically Deku aces it, and everybody's told to go back home and to continue on with the whole entire their days and come back tomorrow. They do that, and basically Deku sits down in his room and basically just contemplates. And basically Deku's in his room. And Deku has multiple rooms since the X Mansion in this universe is freaking huge. And Deku having at least a couple extra rooms, but mainly this is his favorite one, since he does have room to swim around and also watch TV and all that other stuff and party and stuff like that in this room, and also sleep and relax. Now Deku that night is kind of restless, and he tries to activate one of his water powers, but he activates a new power. And Deku's confused on what this power is. And Deku tries to use it, but he opens his eyes after he tries to activate it, and he sees that he's somewhere else, somewhere not on Earth, somewhere different, and sees that he's just surrounded by light in general, just a straight up white room with no outlines where he could be, in this void of light. Deku starts looking around, basically him looking around more and more, and him getting hit with plunders and over hundreds and hundreds of memories and thoughts and pretty much everything your brain even makes, even if you're not even knowing it. Deku is sensing everything, everybody's emotions, their thoughts, their feelings, everything. And Deku starts overloading. Deku's nose starts bleeding, his eyes start gushing out blood, and Deku goes blind or for a short amount of time in his eyes. Every pore in his face is bleeding profusively. Deku not being able to comprehend so much pain, anger, seeing car accidents everywhere, people dying, reliving the mental pain of somebody or the physical pain of somebody dying, feeling their feelings and their emotions. Pretty much him feeling everything. And Deku yells out in pain, but when we don't see in reality, Deku was just standing there with his eyes completely glowing white and him yelling out in pain. Now his father rushes into the room with Inko and they snap Deku out of it. Charles tries to, stop Deku using his telepathic abilities to stop Deku, but he is very shocked when he sees that he can't get into Deku's mind. He can, like, normally with people that have really good, telepathic abilities, normally, Professor Xavier can make a link or talk to them. But in this case, Professor couldn't get into Deku's mind. He couldn't even reach Deku's thoughts, his feelings, nothing. It was like he couldn't even use his powers on him. It was like he was completely blocked and there was no mental line he can, pick up on. It was no door, no nothing. He couldn't reach Deku. It was like a straight up steel wall around Deku's mind. He couldn't get through it. Now, basically, Charles was very shocked by this, but he took it to the other extreme and grabbed Deku, trying to knock him out of it, shaking him, saying, "Come back to me, son. Don't do this." Blah blah blah. Pretty much telling him to stop. Now, Deku's powers deactivate after he hears the thoughts saying that I don't want you to die or whatever, and I don't know what you're going through. Blah blah from his father. Now, basically, Deku stops and tries to recover it, and he eventually sees the voices, thoughts, halfway clear, but still feels pain through it. Now Deku stops and pretty much collapses. Now it gets seen the next day. Pretty much, not the next day. Pretty much that night. Pretty much Deku in the hospital's office, but in pretty much nursery or pretty much the daycare. Pretty much what was it? The pretty much first day area, or pretty much the doctor area in the X Mansion. Basically, Deku being treated by his father, or pretty much from Hank as well. Basically, Hank saying that Deku has suffered some mental, not suffered, but his powers or his telepathic abilities have been heightened by 1%, a very big percent as well. And basically, Charles says, "What is the problem?" Basically, it pretty much, B says if Deku keeps on having these mental breaks of pretty much projecting his mind everywhere on planet Earth, everywhere, basically he'll have a stroke and he'll die. Now basically they're very shocked by this, and Charles starts to think maybe he can get a inhibitor for Deku to try to stop him from using his mental abilities. Now basically Deku hears this as he's in the pretty much he's in the pretty much the hospital bed, or pretty much the you know hospital area bed, pretty much being scanned by Koi, pretty much a Koi. But Koi explained more about how if Deku keeps on going this way, he will be stronger, and he already was, on the scans he was already well over the power of, well basically what would happen here is Deku was way well over the power of, Cerebro, or he was well over the power of Cerebro. Now, basically, Deku gets shown if he keeps on keeping up, or if he goes back into a mental state like this, basically, he will have a miniature stroke of sorts. His mind will go through the same pain, and most likely, if he does it a couple more times, he might go brain dead. He might still or stay in the mental space forever and become brain dead, and his body will become limp on the outside. Now, basically, Deku sees and pretty much is very confused. Now they see that, they don't see that. Basically, what would happen here is basically Deku would have a type of mental ability. Now that ability he would activate, basically that ability was called enhance. Basically, that power could be used on other people and also Deku, but Deku instinctively used it on himself. Basically, enhancing his power he can already use on Q and use accurately his telepathic abilities like mind reading and also other stuff like projecting his thoughts and memories in people's heads, basically, and also doing mental fights. Basically, Deku would become a mental god of sorts, being able to dictate whatever people dream of, think of, or just taking away mental free will in general. Deku would become a god among telepaths. Deku could change people's thoughts, their personalities, themselves, their souls themselves. Basically, Deku's powers are so enhanced to a point where he could easily just turn Charles Xavier brain dead or straight up just knock out Dark Phoenix by just looking at her. Now, basically, Deku was very shy. Now, Deku could master it, but he would have to be extremely careful and completely ready for a next round of basically mental thoughts. Because Deku would never get used to the whole entire barrage of memories, thoughts, feelings, everything he feels. And over time, you guys can decide if Deku should master this ability of being able to be a omnipotent mental god, or should Deku just be able to use this like one shot, one at a time, kind of like one for all, and slowly over time, he'll use another way for this enhanced power or whatever. But yeah, so basically, this enhanced mutation, he can only use his mental abilities because he can't use two mutations at once or three mutations at once. Since when he uses his mutation, he can't. When he uses what was it? When he uses enhance, he can only use it on his mental abilities, since those are the only abilities Deku can completely control. But also, he can't use his mental abilities as at the same time as he's trying to turn his other. Pretty much, if he tries to get a new mutation like his lava power and enhance that, he can't enhance his mental abilities, or basically his pretty much mental abilities would go away for a couple minutes or a couple hours. Now, basically, Deku would go back to the school the next day. Basically, him getting very shocked by the whole entire events. Now, I will leave it off here, guys. So, guys, I want to ask you one last question in the comments. Please answer. Should Deku be shipped with Kendo or somebody else? Up to you guys. Or you guys can comment down below a character, or pretty much a character or a child or the daughter of a certain X-Men member you want me to ship Deku with. Or you can probably tell me to ship Deku with somebody, somebody in particular, or even a pro hero. I'm not really biased against that. So basically, yeah. So guys, oh yeah, I haven't done a pro hero ship in months. But yeah. So basically, guys, after this video, you will be seeing what if Spider-Man was in the CW Part 1. You will be seeing what if the Ninja Turtles were in the CW Part 1 rebooted. And you will be seeing what if DCU Flash was in the MCU, or yeah, it was in the CW or the MCU. I think the MCU. So yeah, see you guys later. Bye. As always, guys, have a blessed day.